These are the 12 events leading up to the Civil War done by Alan Espino and Lester Chappie Chap. The Missouri Compromise of 1820. In the growth of years following the 1803 Louisiana Purchase, Congress was compelled to establish a policy to guide the expansion of slavery into the new Western Territory. Missouri's application for statehood as a slave state sparked a bitter national debate. In an effort to preserve the balance of power in Congress between slave and free states, the Missouri Compromise was passed in 1820, admitting Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state. 1831. Nat Turner's Rebellion. In August of 1831, a slave named Nat Turner incited an uprising that spread through several plantations in southern Virginia. Approximately 70 cohorts killed around 60 white people. 55 slaves, including Turner, were tried and executed. 1846 to 1850. The Wilmot Proviso. With national relations sourced by the debate over the Wilmot Proviso, Senators Henry Clay and Stephen Douglas managed to broker a shaky accord with the Compromise of 1850. The compromise prevented further territorial expansion of slavery while strengthening the Fugitive Slave Act, a law which compelled Northerners to seize and return escaped slaves. 1846 to 1848. The Mexican War. Between 1846 and 1848, a war fought between two North American nations. The United States and Mexico did what most wars do. It began with a bullet, it took lives, it ended with a treaty, and made its mark on history's time. The Compromise of 1850. Divisions over slavery and territory gained in Mexican-American War were resolved in Compromise of 1850. It consisted of laws admitting California as a free state, creating Utah and New Mexico territories with the question of slavery in each to be determined by popular sovereignty. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. The Fugitive Slave Acts were a pair of federal laws that allowed for the capture and return of runaway slaves within the territory of the U.S. Enacted by Congress in 1793, the first Fugitive Slave Act authorized local government to seize and return escaped slaves to their owners and impose penalties on anyone who aided their flight. Uncle Tom's Cabin, 1852. Harriet Beecher Stowe's anti-slavery novel Uncle Tom's Cabin is published. The novel sold more than 300,000 copies within 3 months and was so widely read. This novel has a more famous reputation of polarized many stereotypes that people still carry today. Its popularity brought the issue of slavery to life for those who remained unmoved after decades of legislative conflict and widened the division between North and South. Bleeding Kansas, 1854, was a small civil war in the United States fought between pro-slavery and anti-slavery advocates for control over the new territory of Kansas under the doctrine of popular sovereignty. Dred Scott v. Sandford, 1857. The Supreme Court ruled that Americans of African descent, whether free or slave, were not American citizens and could not sue in federal court. The court also ruled Congress lacked power to ban slavery in U.S. territories. John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry was an effort by armed abolitionist John Brown to initiate an armed slave revolt in 1859 by taking over United States Arsenal by Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Abraham Lincoln's election, 1860. Lincoln won the party's presidential nomination. In November 1860 election, Lincoln faced Douglas, who represented northern factions of heavily divided Democratic as well as Breckinridge and Bell. As the war progressed, his complex move towards ending slavery included the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. Lincoln used the U.S. Army to protect escaped slaves, encouraged the border states to outlaw slavery, and pushed through Congress the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which permanently. The Battle of Fort Sumter, 1861. The intense Confederate artillery bombardment of Major Robert Anderson's small Union garrison in the unfinished fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, had been preceded by months of siege-like conditions. This was considered the first war of the American Civil War. These are the sources for all the photos that we used in the video. This concludes the project.